Hi, welcome to the campaign diary. It's been a while. I was just thinking about what we were going to talk about today. I'm Fen the GM, and this episode we're going to talk about a session that actually happened 2.5 weeks ago. So my memory is going to be a little bit fuzzy on it. Just been so busy, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. Although I've been wanting to tell people. One of the worst parts, or the best parts, about being a GM is knowing all the things and not having anybody to tell because I can't give it away. So this is kind of my release for that. So waiting so long has been. When last we left our heroes, they were at the top of the werewolf keep. They had just successfully defeated the boss. They all survived. They got Glenn through it. And they had been bitten and they weren't sure who was a werewolf and who wasn't, and they weren't sure how to tell or how to fix it. So they were kind of worried about what that was going to look like for them, what they were going to do going forward. So once they were all rested up, leveled up, actually don't know if they leveled up then. I think they were already leveled up going into that fight, but they rested up, kind of talked about what their best course of action would have been. As far as they were aware, they had possibly a cleric coming from the duchy capital to potentially heal Glenn, and could probably heal them if they were infected as well. They could just book it and hope for the best. That one was quickly quashed because they wanted that reward money, which wasn't actually a lot. So we've run into an issue here. I have misunderstood, apparently, the way that the monetary system works. I think it's supposed to be like 10 copper into 1 silver, 10 silver into 1 gold, and I have as 100s. So I'm currently, as of this moment, kind of trying to decide if I want to just reimburse them a bunch of money for my mistake, or if we're just gonna roll with it. Um, because honestly, they they call me out on how much things should cost a lot, and I'm not sure how much of it is like metagame. I want all the monies, and like actually like playing the game. Like that doesn't seem quite right. But they were guaranteed 100 gold for doing this mission, and they went back to town and collected it. Um, didn't didn't tell the Baroness about the potential they were cursed. They just said, "Yep, we did it. Don't ask any more questions, thanks." Because as far as the characters know, they all could be werewolves. They were all bitten at one point or another. Metagame, we as the players, as the GM, know that Bromdeer failed his saving throw, and EC failed his saving throw. So those two were the two infected with lycanthropy. They also know that the target, their mission as a group, is to find out who kidnapped them, who sold them into slavery, and to get revenge. A and B, each of them has something stolen from them that this person has. They know they're in Port Malate, which is a port on the west coast of Baryon, which is the kingdom they're in. And it's, pretty far away. They're about halfway through the country. So it would be a pretty hefty walk of, probably about a week. So they could go there, or they could go down to the capital where they know they can get healed. We worked it out. So that would have been like a 3 and a bit day walk. And I said that there was going to be a full moon in 3 days. This wasn't planned out ahead of time. It just felt dramatic and kind of give them a sense of urgency on what they wanted to do. So they decided they'd head down to Harpeth Castle, is what it's called, and try and find a cleric who could cast Remove Curse on them. That's what they thought they were going to do. I had other plans. They ran into an encounter, which I had kind of decided like that morning of our session that this is what I wanted to do, and I whipped something together, and it turned out really, really good. It's probably one of my favorite moments of of our sessions, of all our sessions, when we've had 4, 5, 6 sessions at this point, 4 to 6 hours each. So, this like hour period, 45 minutes, an hour, however long it actually took to role play out was one of my favorite things to do as a GM. Let me tell you about it. So the characters, are walking down the road. They're heading south towards Harpeth Castle. When all of a sudden, out of the trees in the forest, they're on a road in the forest, and out of the trees, suddenly a barbed devil runs out, just running away from something. He locks eyes with the party. Combat starts. It's one barbed devil. These 4th level characters make short work of them. Almost all of them still have their silvered weaponry. The only person who actually ran into any problem was Quispy, who had purchased new weapons in town. He'd switched to dual short swords, so his rapier that he was using was no longer with him. And Cupid has a silver, like a proper magical weapon now, +1 to hit, greatsword, and he was using that. And EC, of course, has his magic, so they made short work of it. I don't think it might not have even touched them, done any damage to them at all. They kill this barbed devil. It burns away to ash, and looking over into the trees, they see a dryad is watching them. Now, Dryad only speaks, as far as the stat block goes in the monster manual officially, it only speaks Elven or Sylvan, and none of the players know either of those languages. EC does know Comprehend Language, so he casts that, relays what the Dryad is saying to the party, but that was a fun little role-play encounter where this, Dryad was out tracking the barbed devil, who was, then taken up by the party, so she is very, amenable to talking with them, but she can't actually speak. She's asking them yes or no questions, because they can understand her now, but she can't understand them. So she's asking yes or no questions, they're nodding, shaking their head, and eventually she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna bring you back. Come on, I'll bring you back to my boss. And so they go through the trees, and I describe it as being very disorienting. The thing I was trying to convey, and I kind of mentioned this to them afterwards as like a, hey, you've been to a place, is that they're kind of heading into the Feywild. They're going into, I don't know if it's official. This is just something in my head, knowing what I know from other settings about Fey and the Feywild. I imagine there is this border region where it doesn't quite exist in either realm, but you can get to either realm easily from it. And that's where they head. So this quasi-Fey wild grove. This dryad leads them through the trees, and I describe it as you feel like you might be going in circles. And then eventually they get out into this clearing. Clearing of trees, there's heavy brush around the outside. They have to push through to get in. 4 trees in the middle. And I asked them all to roll perception. And the fantastic thing about this was that only Quispy rolled high enough to actually see what was standing in the middle of the grove, and that was a unicorn. This unicorn's name, although they don't know it at the time, is Balsephimon the Beholden. And he is an agent of one of the Queens of the Fae, a relatively good aligned Fae, granted into her service by one of the gods, and he is a proper celestial being.
I would like to address this statement to every single human being born and raised on Earth. We call ourselves simply celestial beings.
Unicorns are mysterious. They are somewhat ephemeral. And in the writings in the monster manual, it kind of says how even if you see it 1 second, you may not see it the next. And so I took that to mean that it has this kind of a perception filter, if you want to go Doctor Who, or if you want to talk about Artemis Fowl, going back a little bit. the fey creatures have this perception filter as well, where things just kind of, you're not looking for it, just kind of your eyes slide off.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I know you're there, but I don't want to know.
And I imagine that he has something very similar. So Gwisby just, happens to perceive enough, see through this filter, and he looks and he sees a unicorn, and he's like, holy cow. And everyone's like, what you talk about, Gwisby? And he starts talking to the unicorn. And the unicorn is talking back to him, but only in his mind. And so as we played this, as, we play digitally. We play on Fantasy Grounds on a digital tabletop over Discord. So I was messaging him what the unicorn is saying into his mind, and he is verbally saying what his response is to this unicorn that he can't see. And I asked him specifically, do you want to tell the other people what you see? Because I messaged him, you see a unicorn standing in the middle of this clearing. Do you want to, and then asked him, do you want to tell him what you see? And he just says no and starts talking to it. So the other characters are freaking out. They're wondering what's going on. They're like, I'm going to need to get into combat. It was a great moment. It was a hilarious moment. It was fun. And it's one that's going to stick with me for a while. So I'm really happy with how well it turned out, considering it was a really almost an improv situation, the entire thing. Eventually the unicorn shows itself. He talks with Gwisby enough, and he figures, it's okay. These guys seem like they're, on a righteous path. Two of the characters he recognizes as a, lawful, good celestial being. He has the ability to see into the hearts of other creatures. And so he sees that Bromdeer and Cupid are both generally good people. And so he, as a service for, defeating this fleeing devil and not needing his, his family, basically, the dryads and the fey creatures that live in the grove with him, to not requiring them to attack and to fight and potentially die to this barbed devil, he heals Glenn Cartwright, who is still with them because, they need him healed, and they said they were going to watch him. So this unicorn heals Glenn, heals Bromdeer, does not heal EC. EC is a chaotic evil character, and the unicorn knows this. He tells them that only one of your party needs healing now. Or somehow mentioned that, just the one of you, you're going to be fine. I will not, even indirectly benefit Chaos. They ask him what he would want for, to heal him, and he basically says, you have to defeat a much greater evil for me, and then I'll do it. And it wasn't like, this is your quest, but I think that's how it came across the characters, or to the players. The players, I think, again, we're thinking of this as like this is a quest giver NPC, when really it's just, this is an important NPC, and you asked him what he wanted to do a thing that he doesn't want to do. And I don't really think I had a chance. I think they were just talking about it, and I just had to be like, well, the unicorn's the unicorn. He's just gonna, he's above all this. You did a thing for him, and he's kind of returning the favor, and then you either help more or you don't, and he doesn't really care. Eventually they say, okay, well, where do we go now? What would we, if we wanted to help, what would we do? And he tells them, up in the northwest of this country, this evil is forming. It's they've been probing us. That's what that was with their bearded devil. There was a larger attack, but we fended them off. Trying to attack into the Feywild because they know we're here, and we actively want to stop them. We are at war with these creatures. We have been since before your people walked these lands. So they've, stumbled unwittingly into an ancient battle here between the force of good, generally, of Balsephimon and his fey creatures, and the forces of evil of the demons, and their leader, who they don't necessarily know yet, and maybe they don't have one. They totally have one. Although, the players don't know that yet. Now they do. They watch these. I know. So the players ask, hey, do you have a guide? Maybe someone who speaks our language that we can just, show us where to go, be it, where you want us to go or where we want to go, which is the village, because they still have Glenn with them, and they want to give him back because he's a level 0. He's not great. He shot his longbow a few times. And he goes, okay, sure, I can do that. And he basically clomps a hoof, which I imagine being like a unicorn snap of the fingers. And from out behind him walks Malphasette. I really thought there'd be more applause or something. I love Malphasette. The joke of the party is that I really like Malphasette, and the party hates Malphasette. They can't stand her. And it's because she's chaotic neutral, and also because she likes to miss her attacks. She's a warlock. She casts Eldritch Blast. That's what she does. All her feats are towards Eldritch Blast. Like, that's all of her warlocking. She's got a magical dagger. She's packed with blade. But other than that, she's basically just an Eldritch Blast cannon. Like, that's what she does. And she tends to miss. And for the record, I want to blame Fantasy Grounds because it wasn't properly calculating her to hit bonus when she was casting it. So she failed a lot more than she should have. So the party all groans. Do you have anybody else, they ask? Can we just not use a guide at all? And she's just like, hey, sorry, when Balsephimon here calls, you answer. The grove was under attack. I had to come. Like, I know I left you guys in a bit of a pickle there, give you this quest, and then bounce. But, like, hey, So they agree to go along with her. They say, hey, take us back to the village. We got to give Glennie here back. And so they head back. And I describe it as the same thing. They asked, by the way, this was something that I enjoyed, and it kind of, I think, flew under the radar for almost everybody. They asked, what time of day is it? I think it was Brav because he was thinking about casting a certain spell or something along those lines. And I said, that it's daytime, but other than that, you can't tell where the light is coming from because this is a border Fey region and its time works differently here. So as Malphasette, and as I say this, I'm going to increase the dislike of my party for Malphasette. But as Malphasette leads them back, she is not 100% Fey. She is half Fey. She's not half elf. She's half Fey. So she leads the party back and basically messes up when she's supposed to arrive. She makes the wrong turn at Albuquerque, and then suddenly she is in the future.
Don't look much like Los Angeles to me. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
Not super far in the future, but as the players get back into town, they start meeting the NPCs that they've known, and the NPCs have just kind of subtly changed. One of them had, the father of Glenn, his beard has grown out a bit. Like, he was clean shaven before, and now he's got this heavy stubble on him. Same with the tanner, who was holding on to the cloak, the werewolf cloak that the Cupid had commissioned him to make from the hide. And so they find out that it's been 2 weeks. They've been gone for 2 weeks. The town was starting to get worried. These saviors had kind of come in, killed the werewolves, and gone to try and find some healing. And they were like, oh, okay. Thanks, Malphasette. I do think they blamed Malphasette, so maybe their dislike won't increase anymore. But yeah, it was a funny moment. It was an interesting moment of like, hey, we kind of just stepped outside of time, and now we're over here. Okay. But they made the most of it because the town, absence makes the heart grow fonder. They returned to the inn, the Famished Fox, that they were staying in, and I have them roll a perception check for something that will come up later. But the bar is crowded; it's packed, like it wasn't when they left. And so I had them roll perception, and none of them made it. They all rolled horrible. I think they were all single digits, and but they enter, and the bartender goes, "The heroes of Edham have returned at last." And just the crowd goes nuts, and people are happy because it's a bar where, everybody wants to cheer about something. Cal blows a ton of money on drinks for the bar. They don't want him to pay for anything, so he's like, everybody else gets drinks. And it was just a big party. The next morning, they all kind of get up, wake up, they're doing their thing, kind of starting to come together as a group. And they have another NPC show up, someone they have not met before. It's a big man in plate mail, very fancy looking, kind of noble vibe to him, and he kind of just greets Bromdir very roughly, and Bromdir's like, "Oh, hi, yes." And it turns out that his name is Pearson. He is a emissary of the crown, which is a title of Baryon. It is a mostly honorary title, and it is, think Sentinels from Mass Effect. You know, they're kind of above the law. They don't hold any like official status. They're just, you know, very honorable people, report directly to the king, and if there's ever a problem in the nobility, it's an emissary who is the one who fixes it. Pearson leads a small company of soldiers. He was formerly in Harpeth Castle. When he got news of the werewolf problem, he brought his soldiers to try and crush it. You know, this would be the kind of thing that he does. You know, goes between different areas. You know, goes to outlying areas and tries to really, keep things calm, enforce the peace that the king has had for some 60 years. Obviously, when he got there and the werewolf problem was solved by a bunch of misfit adventurers, he was really keen to meet them. So finally getting the chance, he talks to Bromdir, he talks to Cupid. Cupid gets really offended when Pearson, who is this roaming emissary of the north, he doesn't recognize Kedlum, which is the area that his family is from. As far as the rest of the country is concerned, Cupid Belnar is the oldest son of the current Duke of Kedlum. Their ascension or their succession policy is one of like almost a treasure hunt. His whole quest is to go out and get as many trophies, kill as many, devotees of Ninazu, who is basically a stand-in for Tiamat, and bring it back. And that's how whoever has the most trophies is the one who wins, who ascends to the Baronhood, controls the entire region. It's a fairly tribal thing, and something that me and Brav have been going back and forth on, because I think the way that we see this is a little bit askew, and it's kind of slowly been inching back into alignment. Because when he first said it, I was like, oh yeah, it's basically, you're kind of this tribal outskirt of Baryon, but you're still part of it. And I think he sees it as very much not. So we've just been kind of working our way back towards this middle place of like when he says something and I'm like, yes, I understand, because it's still a little bit off. But other than Cupid, Pearson makes a good impression on the party, and he, volunteers. He says, oh, if they, ask them their story, they tell him about being slaves, about earning their freedom, and how, there was this slaver that they're trying to track down, and also the owner of the grotto got away as well, so they're not, sure where he went. So he says, well, if there's a slaver operating in Baryon, that is not okay, and I need to put a stop to it. So he offers the party to come along with them if he would like, and asks how they were planning on getting to Port Malite, which is the town where they have the most up-to-date information on this slaver. And at this point we basically talked about how would you get there. We look at the map. It's made in hexographer, so we were checking out the hexes, what kind of terrain there might be. The information they have on the northwest region is that there's demons there. There might be a problem. We might run into some issues if we go over land. But you could also go through the dwarven lowways. So these are basically highways cut through the bottom of the mountain. You go into a dwarven hall, you go further underground, and suddenly you're under the mountains, and you can just take a road. There's a road underground. The caveat there is that if you are not like part of the official military of Baryon, of any part of Baryon, they're going to deny you. If you're not some kind of nobility, they're going to deny you. That's not a problem for them because they have Pearson, who is an emissary of the crown. When he flashes his signet ring, it opens every single door. Nobody is going to deny him because he speaks with the king's voice. So they decide at the end of that session to go with Pearson, to take the lowways and, maybe they'll pass by Bromdeer's home, you know, learn a little bit more about the dwarves, and really head into the Duchy of Ostelvik in like the heart of the Dwarven Mountains. So we ended the session getting to Azer, one of the easternmost halls of dwarves. And when I say a dwarven hall, I am thinking a city, a dwarven city underground. It's just simply what they call them. Dwarves in this setting are basically short, to pull a phrase from Matt Colville, the dwarves in this setting are basically short Vikings. They're Vikings who dig instead of sail. They drink a lot, especially if you look at Bromdeer. They like to fight, they like to work. And I worked a lot with Bromdeer, with Cal, to kind of define what does dwarven society look like? Like how does the power structure work? How is it, you know, how is it adapted to humanity? How, you know, because they are lieged to a human king, they have to have some kind of a feudal power structure that is similar. You know, how have they adapted to that? What are some of the things, you know, what does the family life look like? What is, what else do we talk about? We talked about, you know, clans, guilds. I think in the human society, although they haven't really seen it, they haven't run into a town yet, guilds play an important role. So, you know, there's going to be a fighters guild. There's probably in a big town, there's going to be a thieves guild. There's going to be merchant guilds, lots of merchant guilds. There's going to be mages guilds. You know, anything that you have a job in, especially something that offers up a product or a service, it's going to have a guild of people who've come together to perfect the craft or to, you know, have a better market for themselves. They arrived at Azer. They kind of called it a day. They did do a little bit of exploring, I think, where they EC has a soul gem, or has a gem stone, a 500 gold piece gemstone that he can turn into a soul gem because he has this custom class of the soul thief, which is just a wizard without specialization, and this is what he does. So he needs to kill somebody or find a recently dead person within a minute and cast his ritual and turn this soul gem into, well, turn this topaz stone is what it was, into a soul gem. And so they go out and try and find trouble. He, Malphasset, and Gwisby all go out and try and find trouble. Bromdeer and Cupid go off and look at the markets, try and find some, you know, supplies. They both found what they were looking for. EC and company got into a fight with some local ruffians who were shaking down a shop owner. You know, Squid, who plays EC, walks this really, really fine line. So what he's actually doing is super evil. You know, he's taking somebody's soul before it can escape to, you know, whatever god they worshipped or the afterlife in general. He's taking it and forcing it here, locked into a stone, the very essence of a person's being, like literally their immortal soul. And he's going to use it to cast a spell. He's going to destroy this person entirely so he can cast the spell. And like I've really been trying to drive home, like, what you're doing is super evil. It's wrong, very wrong. Like I try and, you know, bring it up every now and then because it's just not a good thing. But he walks a fine line of, I'm gonna kill people, mostly people who deserve it, except for that, he killed the noble that they had captured, and I guess to his thinking, they were benefiting from, you know, the slave fighting. Like, that's pretty wrong. And now he's killed, as a group, they killed these thugs on the street, and he took one of their souls. That was a funny fight because Malphasset got the killing blow on every single enemy. I know she was the Eldritch Blast cannon, so she just fired off a couple of Eldritch Blast each turn, and you know, got the final blows. Although it was mostly Gwisby who got the majority of the damage. You know, at one point I think he did like 40 damage in one round, just because he's an assassin class thief, assassin class rogue with 2 weapons. Like, he's dual wielding as an assassin. Just, he does all of the damage. All EC did was just take the soul. So it was an interesting encounter. Also, the fact that Gwisby managed to get it to look like they had killed each other. They intimidated the shopkeeper into silence and made it look like they killed each other. So hopefully that won't come back to bite them. I don't know if it will or not. They did roll really well, so probably not. But you never know. Maybe the next time they're in Azer, there might be a rumor of some vigilante ghosts or something. Who knows? So that was that session. As I've said for the third time, I don't think I'm going to remember anything this time. So yeah, we'll talk about the next session in the next episode, which again has already happened because I'm super behind. But I really enjoyed this particular session. The next one is really fun. They go into Loways. They discover what has happened to Bromdeer's home. And prepare to go back into the overworld. So, until the next episode, happy gaming!